So what we do feel is that the real empowerment of the 500 million people today who are not part of the digital economy because they don't have a smartphone, they don't have a connectivity. So they will become integrated because they will be able to use voice as a primary medium in their own language for accessing services.
Welcome to the Regulating AI podcast with Sanjay Puri. AI is changing the world faster than rules can keep up. So how do we protect people without killing progress? Each week, Sanjay brings you inside conversations with global leaders, policymakers, and innovators who are wrestling with that exact question. So if you're curious about the future of technology and how it's governed, you're in the right place. Today, on this special episode of the Regulating AI podcast, shot at Davos, we're joined by Abhishek Singh, CEO of the IndiaAI Mission and Additional Secretary at India's Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. From shaping India's national AI mission to driving policy at the highest levels, Abhishek is at the center of how India is thinking about AI governance, innovation and regulation, a timely conversation on building responsible AI at scale.
Abhishek Singh, it's a real pleasure to have you on our podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure for me.
Abhishek, you are the CEO of the India AI Forum, as well as you're in MeitY. Tell our listeners who might not be as aware of what the India AI Forum is and what are you here doing at Davos?
I'm a career civil servant and I'm heading India's AI mission. I work in Ministry of Electronics and IT. I've been part of India's digital story for long. And as you all must be knowing, India has been using technology for empowering people for quite some time. India was the pioneer which led to coining of the term digital public infrastructure, which has become part of the global lexicon whenever we talk about technology for governance at any forum. At the G20, it really came to the forefront. So as we look into the advancement of AI, and as AI has lately become a buzzword after the ChatGPT moment of November 22, even though it has been existed for a long time, even though we may be behind China and the US at the current stage, as per the Stanford AI Index 2025, it rates India as the number 3 in the AI Vibrancy Index. But given our tech talent, given of the engineering workforce that we have, given Indian IT companies, given the prowess that they have in providing technology services to the whole world, people of Indian origin working in many of these global tech firms, some of them even leading them, the expectation of India to be an important player in the AI ecosystem is there from everyone. So what we have been trying to do is to try to bridge the gaps which are there in our AI story in order to ensure that we are able to catch up with the best in the world, whether it's US or the China. And this includes provisioning for all the necessary ingredients for building an AI ecosystem. Like talent is one, but we need compute, we need data sets, we need building our own models, we need building our own applications. So towards this objective, India AI Mission was conceptualized. And we are trying to build step by step, brick by brick, the entire ecosystem, right from the energy level to the infrastructure level of data centers, to the compute, to the foundation model, to the applications, to the regulatory framework that is required. So that's what we are doing at the India AI Mission.
Our audience, as I said, a lot of them happen to be in the US, Europe, etc. These are entrepreneurs, but these are policymakers, etc. Just very briefly, you have a very important summit coming up next month. Just tell our audience that what this summit is and why they should be attending this too.
So this summit that we are hosting in February is the fourth in the series that started at Bletchley Park in November 2023, which was like kind of positioned as a safety summit because the issues of safety and security were at the forefront and people were wondering whether the frontier AI model, the research that's going in, where will it lead to and in what ways humanity will be adversely impacted. From there, we went to Korea where the safety and innovation part came in, onwards to the French Action Summit last year, which India co-chaired along with France. And therein, issues other than safety and security were also discussed, whether it was about sustainability, whether about future of work, whether about governance, whether it was about public interest AI. So that was there. So onwards, as we come to India, the first such summit being held in the developing world, first such summit being held in the country of the global south, we are bringing the issues that directly impact us, that directly impact the larger global majority at the forefront. And these include looking at the impact of AI on three key pillars: people, planet, progress. People, primarily, we are looking at issues related to jobs, issues related to skilling, reskilling, and preparing the workforce to meet the opportunities and challenges that AI poses. Second pillar, of course, is about planet, which is much easier understood with regard to impact of AI on energy. How do we balance the needs of sustainability with the needs of building large-scale AI factories, and also the other dimension about using AI to address challenges of climate, or even using AI to make the grid itself more efficient. How do you reduce the transmission distribution losses? So there are a lot of work which is happening world over. So that will be one focus area. The third pillar is about progress, which has two dimensions. One is about economic growth, which will look into all issues related to efficiency, productivity, so that all sectors of the economy benefit. And the other sector will be about social good. Like how do we use AI for improving access to public services for more and more people? How do we build services in all languages? How do we ensure use AI for basic healthcare? How do we use AI for imparting education, for building personalized language plans? How do we use AI for benefiting farmers, agriculture sector? So these are the three pillars around which we have structured. And the underlying theme will be how do we democratize AI resources? How do we ensure that countries of the global south also have access to compute, datasets, algorithms, applications at the same level that the world has? So these are the key issues that we are bringing at the forefront of the Impact Summit in Delhi.
Abhishek, when you talked about the stack, the chips, the talent, the energy power, if you were to pick one, where you see a little bit of a constraint that India has, which one would you pick out of those?
See, like the biggest constraint that we have is in building the AI factories, the cost that it takes, because we are a large country, we are over 1 billion plus people. And if you do inferencing at scale, for example, if you have to do inferencing for 100 million people or 200 million people, that would require building huge AI factories and of the order of 200,000 GPUs and all, which will require almost 15 to 20 billion dollars of investment. So therein, we need to get the private sector, we need to get the VCs, we need to get the funds to invest in that, because ultimately use cases for AI will emerge from a country like India only. And when AI is adopted at population scale, then only revenues will come in. Otherwise, we keep on hearing of this $1 trillion investments in building AI capacity and in trying to invest into building an AI in the quest towards artificial general intelligence. But how do you monetize that? How do you bring in revenues? That revenues will come in when you deploy such solutions at scale for individuals, for enterprises, and that brings in efficiency and productivity gains. And that will happen only in a country like India. And India will be at the forefront of building applications on top of many of these models and become the prime AI service provider for the world. On one hand, we do have the constraint, but we do also look at the opportunity that arises if we are able to address that issue.
From what I understand, ChatGPT's second largest users are in India, and I think for Claude and Anthropic also. And I have a feeling probably will become number one very, very soon in terms of adoption. DPI is something that you mentioned. Amazing what India has been able to do. Are there some lessons from DPI that can be applied to the India AI mission?
A lot. In fact, the DPI and AI, the way we are looking at it, is intertwined. The key principles of building digital public infrastructure has been that to build the underlying common layer, make it interoperable, build it on the principles of open standards, build it on the principles of security by design, build it on the principles of ensuring data protection by design, and then this underlying common layer of India stack that we call it, whether it's the identity layer or the payments layer or the data layer, that becomes the platform on which we build various applications in various sectors. Because AI also needs what? It needs the common compute layer. Compute should not be a problem that everybody solves. So we are enabling access to compute at a low cost for everyone who is building that. The data layer, train an AI model or build an AI application, you need data sets. So we have built an AI Kosh platform, which allows access to data from both public sector and private sector. And then we are also building a foundation model layer. The foundation model layer is like building our own foundation model, which will be hosted in India, over which we will have complete explainability and understandability. And on top of that, we are building an agentic AI layer, which will be like a UPI for AI. UPI is the payment layer that we have. And on the agentic AI layer, then using the compute and the data sets at the base, different companies and different entrepreneurs will be able to build AI applications for various sectors. So AI will ultimately lead to expanding the reach of DPI. One way in which it's also panning out is enabling services in all Indian languages, using the NLP layer, the Bhashini APIs that we have built, using AI for enabling voice-enabled services. So what we do feel is that the real empowerment of the 500 million people today who are not part of the digital economy because they don't have a smartphone, they don't have a connectivity. So they will become integrated because they will be able to use voice as a primary medium in their own language for accessing services. So the way I visualize AI and DPI, so it's like exponential expansion of reach of DPI services from across the country to access these services in their mother tongues and by voice as a primary means of access.
That's incredible. You talked about an agentic layer, which is incredible because that's, I talked to a lot of world leaders and others. I haven't heard that. Is that going to be based like on something like MCP or some kind of protocol? How will that kind of work, Abhishek?
If we have to build an AI application for healthcare, like with which you could diagnose, say, tuberculosis or cataract or something, you will need a few elements there. You will need access to X-ray images, which are anonymized, you will need access to compute layer, you will need access to models. So what we are saying is that all the ingredients that are required to build up an agent for building a tool for diagnosing tuberculosis will be made available as a common resource. And those who are innovating it will be able to mix and match, play it, take some data from some source, take some data from other source, and try to bring in their own ingenuity to build an application. Like, for example, if farmers have to be given a service, and farmers have to be given a service for limiting the amount of water that they are using for irrigation, they will need data from the Indian Meteorological Department, the weather data, they will need the crop history data, they will need the soil health card data. If we are able to make these data sets available, then those who are trying to build models can kind of analyze these, bring in their own creativity and ingenuity, and build in use cases and applications which will solve real world problems. And when that happens, we'll be able to really create value and empower people. We can expand this to manufacturing, we can expand this to retail, we can expand this to enterprises becoming more efficient. Instead of getting into a mad rush of building newer models and trillion parameter models, we can work with existing specialized sectoral models which might be smaller, which might be more attuned to be installed on-prem and build use cases that will result in value creation.
Even on mobile?
Even in mobile, ultimately.
Because India is a mobile-driven economy.
And ultimately, edge AI is going up. If there is a woman living in a tribal area, she has limited requirements of maybe the local market, maybe the transportation systems, maybe some information about entertainment. If we are able to create personalized experiences which relies on the principles of these Gen AI tools, but offer these services on a localized, hyper-local way with low latency, zero latency, then that's where adoption will happen at population scale.
Abhishek, generally, at least in the Western world, people talk, when they talk about AI, it's financial analysts using it, marketing folks, etc., using it. Today, a farmer, he should not even realize that it is AI. It's just integrated. What is your vision? Tell our audience, because there it's being used really by white-collar workforce AI.
It will be available and accessible for all sectors. And if we make something work for people at the bottom of the pyramid, I'm sure there are enough elements which will ensure that for financial systems and networks, it can be used. What we are actually looking at is even for extending credit, extending microfinance, preventing cyber frauds, preventing financial frauds, looking into designing products which leverage data from multiple sources, financial products which could earlier not be even thought of, can be done. So Reserve Bank of India came out with their free AI framework, which laid down the framework for adoption of AI in financial systems and markets. While we talk about agriculture, we talk about education, we talk about healthcare, it's not that we are not focusing on financial systems and financial markets that the West is looking at. Similarly, we have a project called Gati Shakti, which is looking into automating the entire logistics space. So, and whenever anybody is trying to set up an enterprise or a business anywhere, you again need data and information from multiple sources. How do you simplify that? How do you cut down the time taken to start a business from a few months to a few days? So, and that's where again AI brings in a lot of clarity, a tool for ensuring that the key stakeholders get the right inputs, right information. So we are looking at AI as a kinetic enabler for our economy in all sectors. It's not that we are only focusing on the blue collars or the white collars. In fact, when you look at it, given that India has a larger proportion of blue-collar jobs, in a way we are insulated from the other risks of AI, which relates to jobs and employment.
Abhishek, in the past you talked about a little bit of concentration issue, whether it's concentration with companies or concentration with countries. Solution could be open source, but the other side is national security. That balance between open source and national security, how do you do that? Because there are other countries dealing with the same issue, and we talk to a lot of world leaders. So tell them, how are you balancing that?
See, ultimately, national security for any country will be paramount. And any dependency on any foreign power, when trust in the entire geopolitical space is on decline, is something that no country can risk for.
Right.
Use of AI for strengthening national security is also very much there. Whether you look at military applications, whether you look at analysis of data coming from drones and other sources, again, AI has a big role to play. So the way it pans out for national security is that what you are doing for strategic purposes and for national security, all of it need not be done on a cloud infrastructure. They need not be done on a LLM on which you don't have any control. It need not be done on systems which allows data to flow from your sovereign jurisdiction to other jurisdiction. It requires building up your own capability, your own sovereign AI capabilities. It requires hosting those models that you develop for your own requirements on a sovereign AI infrastructure that is on-prem, that can be 120 billion parameter or 200 billion parameters. These can work on unconnected systems which work locally. Use your AI on that to analyze that. Use that AI to analyze the data and information that you get from various sources. Use that in an unconnected manner so that your national security is not compromised in any manner. So that is what most countries are doing that, and that is what I feel would be the right way to approach this challenge.
How about open source? What do you think about that?
Many specialized models, many companies and organizations are building by using open source, open weight models to distill data and then customizing it to build their own models. But I really don't know how long open source will remain open source. For example, what we are hearing from Meta also is that the next Llama might not be open source. No, so the only open source models will be from China. And then again, there are other dimensions attached to when you're using open source models from China. So what I believe is that instead of getting into this debate about open source and proprietary models, every country, and especially a country like India, with our tech talent and with our size and with our kind of strategic importance AI has, we will need to build our own capability. We are already funding 12 such projects, and we are very near to having our own sovereign AI model. Those models will be open source, but we'll have to rely on our own capability rather than getting into this whole debate about open source or proprietary.
Abhishek, let's talk about workforce. When you walk on this promenade, you see some of the largest technology companies one by one. And by coincidence, they happen to be of Indian origin. You go to Cognizant, etc. AI is revolutionizing how software, especially software, when you look at IDE, things like Cursor or any of these things, Windsurf, etc. I mean, Claude Code, I don't know if you just read what happened. I mean, it is an inflection point where the software is kind of writing itself. So there are two aspects to it. India has incredible talent. You talked about forward deployed engineers, etc. These companies could be also facing an existential issue there. Technology is a big part of India. So what are your thoughts on that?
See, we do realize that we have almost 6 million people working in this sector. They have contributed to a lot of growth that we have seen in the last few years. So we do realize that some of the jobs that are the entry-level jobs, especially the coding jobs, we will have the entry-level coders competing with $20 bots, which sometimes can write better code than what human coders can do. But again, ultimate value will be on using these coding agents, whether it's Cursor or GitHub Copilot or any of the multiple ones. So these are there to use as an aid for the human coder. Because again, the way AI-enabled services will pan out is that it's not that you have a subscription to Cursor AI and your entire code is written. You will need to invest into agentic AI, and you will need to invest into engineers who have the capability of integrating the agentic AI systems with your legacy systems. So for example, if there's a large bank which is getting the services from one of the TCS, Infosys, Wipro, Tech Mahindra, all those on the promenade, you are seeing them. So if they have to adopt to AI to ensure that they become more efficient, It's not that the legacy systems will be done away with and you just take a cursor or a GitHub Copilot and it will work. It will not happen like that. It will require the forward deployment engineers, popularized by Palantir and others, who will work on integrating these agents for doing specific works with your legacy systems. So there is a huge opportunity for India as the prime provider of these AI transformation services. So there will be a reorientation. There will be a requirement of higher order skills. There will be a requirement for retraining. There will require of upskilling, reskilling for the existing engineering workforce that we have. And all Indian companies are working towards that, but they will need to double up on those efforts. They will need to think of building their own cursor AIs because, for example, a company like TCS has got 50 years of code with them.
Yeah.
So using the code knowledge that they have, using the expertise that they have over the years, if they can build their own coding agent and use it to improve the delivery of their services to their existing clients, they will get a lot of value. The next level from agentic AI will be physical AI. There will be a lot of requirements of deploying AI on the edge. Systems that will work on-prem models so that you are not putting data, because what applies for national security will also apply to enterprises and all. They would not like to share their data with a third party. So again, there will be a lot of expertise that will be required for building physical AI systems, autonomous systems, robots that will be required. Just like people have cars today, people may need to have robots as an assistant for them. So those are the opportunities that lie ahead for Indian IT companies. And just like they innovated post Y2K, at that time also it was felt that what after Y2K?
Yeah.
Will Indian companies go out of business? That didn't happen. In fact, it's expanded. Right. Similarly, this is an inflection point. This is the point where Indian companies will need to reimagine themselves. Most of them are already doing. And if they're able to do that, no other country has the capability of providing these services at the scale that is required that India can do.
You touched on something called sovereign AI, which India is focused on. I get that question a lot, that whether India should be focusing on that or building wrappers or services. What is your view?
Of course, we need to build a lot of applications. We need to build a lot of use cases which can be perceived as wrappers on the existing models, which ultimately result in a better user experience for people who are using them, which results in better adoption of DPI or other AI services in enterprises. That is there, that will happen. But given our talent, given our capability, given the requirement that they have, and given the strategic nature of this technology, there is no reason that we should not invest in sovereign AI. And we are doing so because we do realize that the cost of not investing in sovereign AI will be more than the cost of investing it. When the time is there, we do need to build in our capability and ensure that we are able to compete with the best.
Abhishek, you've been exceptionally generous with your time. One final thought for our audience, policymakers, entrepreneurs, that you would like to leave with them.
What I want to say is that, of course, the Impact Summit is happening in February. That will debate many of these issues which are there at the forefront. We are looking at impact across sectors. We are looking at all issues. We are looking at issues of innovation. How do you drive innovation? We are also looking at the issues of how do we restrict the harm that AI can cause? How do we limit deep fakes? How do we watermark AI generated content? How do we build global partnerships for addressing this challenge? So we are hoping to get a very good participation from world over. We'd love to have experts who are joining in. If they are able to join physically, well and good. If not, all our sessions will be online, broadcast live. So do join in the Impact Summit and contribute to the way this technology works for the larger global good, for the larger betterment of humanity.
As Abhishek said, this is not just another AI conference. It's much bigger, the 3 pillars that you've identified. So if our viewers should either in person or virtually do it. Abhishek, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks for tuning in to the Regulating AI podcast with Sanjay Puri. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to leave a comment. We'd love to hear what you thought. Share it with someone curious about the future of AI, and join us next time for more stories and insights from the leaders shaping what's ahead. Right here on the Regulating AI podcast.